Most people think money is a reward for effort, but it isn't. Effort is common. Value, however, is rare. And that misunderstanding alone explains why some people work endlessly and never seem to move forward. Now, money doesn't flow to the hardest worker, does it? It flows to the clearest value creator. And once you see that, business stops feeling random and starts feeling natural. So there's a principle hidden in plain sight in the Bible. And this is going to be Luke 12, verses 48. And it says, "For unto whomsoever much is given, of him shall be much required." And there's many other quotes like, whoever who has, the greatest power has the greatest responsibilities. And there's plenty of other cool quotes. But for now, what we're going to be talking about is how most people, they hear that as pressure, right? But it's actually a business principle or a business law. Because responsibility, it follows capacity. And provision, or being provided for, follows your stewardship. In markets, or the marketplace, just like in the Bible or just like in Scripture, increase is entrusted to those who manage value well. Look at the stewards, who were entrusted with the talents. That is a perfect illustration here. And it's not those with the best intentions, like the one who buried his talent. He might have had good intentions so that his master would get the money back. But ultimately, he let fear control him, right? And it's not about who actually complained the loudest either. It's about those who multiply what's placed in their hands. Like the steward who gave 10 talents and he multiplied it times 10. And actually, the master took away the 1 talent and gave it to the guy who had 10. That's how you know that's not simply religion, right? It's actually economics, explained very plainly. See, a business is not rewarded for how hard it works. And I've heard this from many other influential people as well. Take a look at Myron Golden and Alex Hormozy. Some guys like that. This is exactly what they're saying. Well, that's how you know that this is actually true. And even if you don't think so, look it up for yourselves or just prove it to yourselves, right? Because the business is actually rewarded for how well it serves other people, right? A pain that you can take away from that person. Doesn't matter if it takes you 1 hour, 5 hours, 10 years. If you take that pain away and deliver real value, that's what people want. So let me give you a framework simple enough for a child and serious enough for a real investor, a serious investor. So value is in turn going to be the results, right? And then those results is going to actually turn into trust. And that trust ultimately turns into more revenue. And now it's in that exact order, always. So like I said, number one, we'll break it down a little bit. Value, like I said, it is not effort. Value is usefulness under real conditions. Because if it doesn't solve a problem, a real problem, a painful problem for a real person, in real time for them, then it's not value. Right? And secondly, results, right? The results are the proof, not simply promises. Because the market, it doesn't respond to potential. It responds to the outcome that you deliver. Even small outcomes clearly delivered outperform big claims any day. And that leads me to the next one, right? Trust. Trust is actually built up when the results are repeatable, when you have a system. Because consistency, it beats charisma any day. And like I said, systems always ends up beating out the talent. And that's going to lead to number 4, which is revenue. And it's a lagging indicator because when people chase after revenue directly, that's when they usually distort the first 3 steps, the most important steps. The revenue is great, don't get me wrong. But ultimately, that's why so many businesses, they just feel busy and fragile and overwhelming. So here's the simplest pricing truth that I believe most people miss. And like I said, people, they don't pay for plain effort. They pay to remove that pain or risk or delay, something that takes a very long time. And the more clearly you remove one of those, the easier the pricing becomes. So let me make it a little more plain and simple for you guys to understand, right? For the most part, do you ever hear a customer asking, "Did you work hard?" I don't think so. I think they're asking, "Will this reliably improve my situation?" Because they don't care what you say, they care what they say. So make them say it, right? That's it. Because when pricing feels hard, it's usually because the value is vague, the offer isn't clear, because clarity, it creates confidence in you and your business. And confidence creates decisions. And confusion, it stalls everything. Because in sales, if it's done correctly, it's not even persuasion. It's just aligning the values and what you guys are doing. So it's a little mental model that I'm going to use to illustrate this. So a strong offer, it removes that need to convince somebody. Because when people hesitate, it's rarely about money. It's about some type of uncertainty. It's an unclear outcome, an unclear process, unclear risk that you haven't addressed. In your discovery and the questions leading up to the sale, this is where you fail, right? Because weak offers, it forces pressure on that prospect. It puts too much there. But clear offers, it actually invites decisions. Because when you're in discovery in the sales call, if you're asking the right questions that lead them to their pain, like if they don't have enough leads, then their marketing probably sucks, right? Like Hormozy says. So then like you ask a question based on that aligns with your product. And then when you ask them to buy, you just plainly say, we notice that you have this problem. This is what we offer. And then typically they're already screaming for yes because that's their pain and you've already solved it. So just give it to them. So, and here's a misconception I really want to clear out. It needs to get out of here because a lot of people have dealt with a lot of bad salespeople, right? And they think that sales is just taking something from somebody, right? But sales, it's actually helping someone move forward responsibly, because when your offer is actually honest and your delivery is reliable and your intention is clean, conviction replaces that persuasion. Because you're not chasing. You're simply presenting, right? What you already offer to what their pain is. So now I want to address this really quick because the video is getting a little longer than I expected here. But I believe this destroys a lot of potential. And some people call delay being faithful. And yes, maybe it is sometimes. But it's often avoidance. It's something they don't want to do, and that's slowing them down. Some call a lot of the noise building, right? But often it's distraction. You're comfortable doing these buildings, right? You're building something that you've already done. You're so used to it. It feels like progress because it's motion. But motion without direction, you're just drifting. And waiting on God does not mean neglecting responsibility, because Scripture is full of builders, managers, stewards, and a whole bunch of other amazing people, right? But what's not condemned is ambition. But what is condemned is waste. Like I mentioned earlier, talent buried out of fear, resources mismanaged out of comfort, time spent without intention. That's not humility, that's neglect. And markets reflect that truth with precision. Because a serious builder asks 3 questions every single day. What real problem am I solving today? And who specifically benefits from it? And then thirdly, how do I make the results clearer, simpler, and more reliable? That's it. Not branding tricks, not volume for the sake of noise. Just disciplined value creation. And over time, this just compounds quietly. And then when the opportunity finally arrives, it's not luck. You are already prepared. You're ready. So this is the truth I want you to sit with. Money is not the end goal, right? It's the witness of the value that you have delivered. It testifies to that, right? Or the value missing. Build something useful, manage it well, and then serve it with clarity to the people that God put you here to serve. Because increase follows stewardship. That's the standard. I hope this helped. And God bless you guys. Have a great evening.